What's going on, guys? RBG here, bringing you more coverage on Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Even though Game Informer seems to be slowing down on things they want to show for the game, the cogs continue to turn. And you guys have been asking me to do more breakdowns on whatever I can find within the various articles and clips, which I'm more than happy to do so, because we actually have some juicy things to go over today. So sit tight. Now, before we jump into today's video, I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, G2A. If you're looking for a way to purchase the hottest video games without burning a hole in your wallet, you should really consider checking them out. They offer key codes for different platforms such as Steam, PS Network, and Xbox for half the price of the original. So why wouldn't you want to take advantage of this deal? You absolutely lose if you overpay. So go ahead and seize the win. You can do so by clicking the link that will be provided in the description of this video. But yeah, guys, as I was saying, we have some juicy details to go over. You may remember the community post I made regarding people complaining about me potentially spoiling the game, and how I essentially was talked into deleting one picture in particular, which I think was fair because even though Insomniac didn't flat out confirm anything, the picture they released to the general public highly alluded to the possible secret identity of the Tinkerer. Ever since this character was first revealed in the demo, many questions arose regarding who could be behind the high-tech mask. Whoever she is, she's already proven to be a character who will be well equipped to handle the likes of Miles. If you're familiar with the Tinkerer, then you know that this particular villain is usually a male and an older one at that. But over time, we've seen Marvel sort of refresh the character, making him fit within whatever world they're trying to establish. We've seen a brilliant rendition of him in Spider-Man Homecoming, where he worked as a weapons maker using salvaged tech from the Avengers' previous battles. And it looks like Insomniac intends on turning this entire character's concept on its head, because not only is the Tinkerer way younger than he's been before, he's now a female as opposed to being a male. According to the creative director Brian Horton, the Tinkerer will retain the core elements of being this master weaponsmith slash tech guru, but the team wanted to make the character fit within the world they're expanding on with Miles Morales. As you've noticed by the overall aesthetic, they're basically utilizing a similar style Sony animation used for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where we see this very neon-centric yet gritty atmosphere that adds a lot of style to the already cool-looking scenes. It's something that's going to set the game apart from its predecessor Marvel Spider-Man 1, and I think it'll help Miles' Spidey costume stand out during night missions, since black suits are hard to translate during darker scenes. They're calling it the Neon Noir look, which I think is a pretty cool name and catchy at that. Anyways, we already know that the shadow organization known as the Underground will be working to disrupt Roxxon's operations of distributing a new energy source called New Farm. And we saw the Tinkerer in action where she pretty much folded Miles like a lawn chair like it wasn't nothing and instantly proceeded to steal New Farm from a Roxxon truck. Something we instantly noticed is that her and her camp possess some cool looking tech that wields the ability to change into basically any kind of weapon they want. Whether it be a sword, a shield, giant gauntlets, you name it, they can probably manifest it. We didn't know exactly what this nano power tech was called back then, but we do now. According to the creative director, this particular tech is known as programmable matter, and it's the Tinkerer's latest creation. If you notice, it operates from this little node on her backpack, and some of the weapons she uses look fairly similar to the ones we've seen enemies use in the previous game. When you see her use these tendrils to rip the door off of Roxxon's truck, you're instantly reminded of Dr. Octopus's tentacles. And apparently this new creation is supposed to be an amalgamation of all the different weapons the Underground has acquired from the different gangs. They're a new up-and-coming group that has been looking to expand their territory since the likes of Kingpin and Nemagio went under. Another organization who I think they got some of their weapons from is the Silver Sable International. If you guys remember, they were a special ops group hired by Norman Osborn to stop Mr. Negative and his demons, and they had some of the most advanced tech on the market. After the Devil's Breath was eradicated, Silver Sable International was driven out of New York by Spider-Man, but unbeknownst to many, Sable International left many of their equipment and supplies behind. And that very same equipment was later found by Hammerhead, who used it to arm his gang to take over New York City. So I think it's safe to assume that some of those weapons were salvaged by the Tinkerer. And let's not forget that there are other top tech corporations who were briefly confirmed to exist within this universe, like AIM, who had a more prominent role in the unrelated Marvel's Avengers game, a game that many believed would somehow tie into Marvel Spider-Man since the Taskmaster was featured in both titles. Speaking of Taskmaster, I think this is the best time to segue into that picture I mentioned earlier. And this looks to be concepts of the Tinkerer, and as you can see, they have some interesting things going on. Right off the bat, you see this design of the Tinkerer wearing what looks to be Taskmaster's mask, which further emphasizes how long the Tinkerer has been at repurposing tech to suit her style of combat. And Taskmaster has a commonality with that of the Tinkerer, since he's another one of those villains who's stolen weapons from organizations such as S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm still not sure what his mask does other than protecting his face, but I think it's cool that the Tinkerer somehow got a hold of it and modified it to make it more useful. And I'm not sure if anyone else has mentioned this, but I think this could possibly be an entirely different character altogether. Like, I think it's safe to assume that the Tinkerer won't be the only female member in the underground. If you go back to the first reveal trailer for Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, you'll notice Miles about to perform a Venom strike on a similar looking character. She features a similar face mask and that same gray hair color. So this quote-unquote concept art could be showing off more characters besides the Tinkerer. But let us get back onto the Tinkerer and her secret identity. When we first heard the character speak with her slightly modulated voice, we thought she sounded very similar to a character that had a prominent role in the first game, particularly in the City That Never Sleeps DLC. And that is Yuriko Watanabe, also known as Yuri. This version of the Tinkerer's voice actress sounds almost identical to Yuri's voice actress Tara Platt. Not to mention Yuri goes on to be a villain in the comics, which Insomniac aimlessly alludes to when you complete the City That Never Sleeps DLC. So there seems to be some mounting evidence to corroborate the theory of her possibly being this iteration of the Tinkerer. And of course there were some people opposing to this theory, with some stating that it couldn't possibly be Yuri since she becomes Wraith in the comics and not the Tinkerer. And to that I ask, what's your point? If you didn't notice, Insomniac moves to the beat of their own drum, and they don't mind going in a different direction from the pre-established lore. I mean, look at Miles. In every iteration, Miles made it clear that he didn't want to be Spider-Man at first. It was too much of a huge responsibility that he wasn't ready for, and he didn't think he could live up to Peter Parker's legacy.
I thought I was the only one. You're like me.
I don't want to be.
I don't think you have a choice, kiddo.
But Insomniac's version of Miles is very eager to be Spider-Man, and he tries a little too hard to prove that he can be just as good as Peter, so much so that he ends up with egg on his face. So not everything has to be like the comics, guys. The fact that we have a young Tinkerer who just so happens to be a woman should tell you that. But anyways, as we all know, Yuri is Asian, and as you can see, the mystery woman who's wearing a slightly different version of the Tinkerer's mask just so happens to be of Asian descent. This right here, this is the part that had those fans flipping their lids and telling me to take down the picture from the community post. This female is Asian just like Yuri, not to mention that her hair is black and swoosed over just like her hair did in the first game. Now with that said, this doesn't necessarily confirm that the Tinkerer and Yuri are one and the same. For all we know, Insomniac could have easily used this particular art to play into these rumors and completely swerve us once the game comes out. I personally think it would be idiotic on their part to release a picture that flat out spoils the identity of one of their main villains. I'm just saying. I guess we'll have to wait for more solid evidence before we draw our conclusions, because this seems a little too early and too on the nose. But anyways guys, I want to talk about another villain who will be in the game. It seems like you can't bring up Miles Morales without at least giving an honorable mention to his Uncle Aaron. He's a character who's played a pivotal part in Miles' origin story, whether it be in the comics or the movies. Just like his mentor Peter Parker, Miles' role as Spider-Man always seems to counteract with his personal life. Sometimes his rogues gallery hits so close to home that he could literally be rubbing elbows with them and not even know it. And his Uncle Aaron sums this statement up completely, because as you know, he's secretly the Prowler. When he's not being the chill go with the flow Uncle Miles looks up to, he's being the cutthroat contract criminal for hire. We've seen him blackmail Miles by threatening to reveal his secret identity if he didn't help him in the comics. And we've seen him come close to killing him in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. In almost every iteration up to this point, he's been tied to Miles getting his spider powers, but in Earth 1048 Gameverse, he was nowhere to be found, leaving many fans to wonder if he even existed in this particular continuity. But for those of you who had a sharp ear, you may have heard a brief mentioning of him in this particular scene. Take a look.
To shield others in his last moments of life.
Hey, new kid. I'm empty here.
Rio and son Miles, as well as brother Aaron.
So as you hear, Aaron Davis aka the Prowler is alive and well in this universe. We just weren't able to see what he looked like, but thankfully we're now able to. If you noticed, Insomniac has been doing these neat little promos where Miles interacts with certain contacts through messages. And so far we've seen him interact with Peter, Genki, and his mom Rio Morales. And we saw others within his contacts such as his grandmother and Gloria from the first game. But there was one contact that Insomniac was being very tight-lipped about. But thanks largely in part to some of the awesome fans, we were able to discover that that mystery person was Aaron Davis. And I'm loving his design. Like, he looks like he could be this average guy who could be a construction worker. This is gonna make it to where he's the least expected to be an evil villain. And I know you guys are probably wondering if this version of the character will even become the Prowler that we've seen through multiple iterations. And I think it's safe to assume that he will, because there are quite a few pieces that have been laid out in this game. For one, we have the Tinkerer, who's had direct ties to the Prowler. He's actually stolen some equipment from the Tinkerer in the comics, and he was about to purchase some of the Tinkerer's weapons in Spider-Man Homecoming. Given the fact that the Tinkerer in this story sports the same signature colors of him, that being purple, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of him getting a hold of her tech. Another thing they could use is that of Roxxon, because he's actually done some dirty work for them in the comics where he was hired to steal some technology from Oscorp. So what's not to say that he infiltrates the underground and leads them to believe that he's on their side, when in actuality he's serving as Roxxon's mole to get information on what they could be up to. These are things to think about here. And this just in, as I'm working on this video, we now have official proof that Aaron will indeed become the Prowler in this game. Insomniac just retweeted a post showing an artist drawing up some promotional art for Spider-Man Miles Morales. While it was nowhere near complete, something that I instantly noticed was this sick looking character to the far right that has yet to be revealed throughout the trailers and clips. If you notice, he's wearing some advanced body armor, and on his chest he has a symbol that bears quite the resemblance to the Prowler symbol from the comics. So I think this answers our question on if we'll see the Prowler make his appearance in this game. And I'm not sure if it's just me, but his body armor looks very similar to the one worn by the Roxxon guards. So there's a good chance that Roxxon could be in his pockets. Or he could be the mastermind leading the underground, because it's recently been revealed that the Tinker is just a top lieutenant. Well, with that said, I think I'm going to end the video there. What are your thoughts on these theories? Did I provide enough evidence to back my theories up, or are you still not convinced? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on future videos. But if you really enjoyed the video, it would help me out tremendously if you share with all your friends and followers on social media. Sharing really makes a difference. But once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.